On this ITAV show, we look at the WannaCry ransomware virus, how it impacts both AV and IT systems, also how it may have been avoided. Also look at best practices for creating network diagrams from both an AV standpoint and an IT standpoint. All that and more next on the ITAV show.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is the ITAV show, episode 6, recorded Friday, May 19th, 2017. Love-hate relationships. Support for AVNation is brought to you by Chief, the global leader in commercial AV mounting solutions. This is the ITAV show, put on to you by the fine folks at AVNation. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about all the IT and AV stuff and news that we can pull out of the internet. First and foremost, brand new guy. Got to know him a couple of days ago, and very nice guy. His name is Derek Junkus. He works for Extron. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I look forward to talking to you guys today.
Absolutely. And also with us, as always, buddy and pal and longtime AV guy and IT guy as well. His name is Michael Drainer from Drainer Technologies. Hello, sir.
How are you?
Oh, I'm well.
Good deal.
It's the end of May, 3 or 4 weeks before InfoComm. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing at all.
All sorts of things can go wrong. Speaking of things to go wrong, you like that transition? We're recording this on May 19th, so exactly 1 week ago from today. You know, I'm trolling around and looking at the internet, and hey, BBC's doing a live stream. Let's see what the BBC... Holy crap, the NHS, which is their national health system, is under a cyber attack, a ransomware attack at that. If you're interested, I actually wrote a blog post about it and how it impacts the AV industry. This thing was ransomware. It was called WannaCry, or YCrypt, WannaCrypt. And it impacted somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 systems. The main reason we don't know the exact number is because there's a bunch that were in China, right? It locked your computer, and Michael and Derek are much more versed on exactly what ransomware is. So I'm going to do a simple version. It locks your hard drive, locks your computer, puts up a screen that says, hey, you want access to your stuff? Give us money.
Kind of.
Yeah. Typically, that money is in the currency of Bitcoin. Some people's security recovery system involves investing in Bitcoin, which I find funny. I'm not joking about that, actually. But really, it's a
tradable currency.
It's a tradable currency. It does go up in value.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to start with. This is everything that I've read about this specific virus and this specific thing. And Derek, I'm going to start with you on this. Is that this was preventable? And I'm not saying having antivirus. So it was using an exploit on the Microsoft Windows operating system. Okay, it was a known exploit, and Michael will disagree with me on a little bit, and I'll let him do that. But Microsoft knew about it. They created a patch for it. They pushed out the patch, and you had every opportunity to update your operating system to prevent this. The 200 or 300,000 people that are affected by this did not do that, chose not to do that for whatever reason. This is not a judgment on them. So, Derek, you guys, and just like every other manufacturer, I'm not picking on Extron, you guys do pen tests, you do security tests on your equipment, stuff that's going to be on the network. When you discover things, or maybe a client discovers it for you, says, hey, there's a security issue, you guys do your due diligence and you create a patch and you push it out in the form of a firmware typically. That's the last thing that you can do, though. And I guess what I want to get to with this, and you're kind of in the Microsoft boat here, how do you get your people, how do you get your clients, and how do you get your integrators to patch what you guys have said, hey, there's a problem here? How do you get them to do that?
That's a great question, because I think as an industry, we've lagged behind the rest of the world in considering how we might want to patch or update our products. And, the big challenge years ago was that just getting it was an exception to get something on the network, right?
Yep.
To be able to get something there. Now it's the expectation that it's on the network. And when you start putting things on the network, all these other responsibilities come into play. And we first became aware of this potential exploit back in February. And right around that time, February, March timeframe was when Microsoft began to delay some of the regular updates and patches. So our IT security team at Extron, we have a really wide group of people who participate in that, both on the product side and both on the enterprise side for our company. We began to look at this pretty strongly. But the thing about this is that, a vulnerability is just that. Sometimes you know about it, but an exploit or a 0-day isn't something you can prepare for. There's not a standard or a threshold that you can hold yourself to until you know what that threat might be. And so for folks around the world who are experiencing this problem, I get a feeling that we haven't really seen the full effect of what might occur as a result of not only this particular vulnerability that was found, but all of the others that might come as an outgrowth now that a lot of those tools that were published, that were originally designed by the NSA as exploits that they would use, now that those are publicly available, I just get a feeling this is the very first one.
Well, yeah, and not for nothing. Let's be clear about here. The reason that it was a known exploit is because the NSA, for whatever reason, decided to publish it was a WikiLeaks.
It was a WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks. The WikiLeaks published the exploit that the NSA had put into Microsoft. So yeah, you're probably right there. Michael, from the IT standpoint, and you working directly with end users and end customers, how do you get them to patch? Again, it was a patch that Microsoft had made available. Mm-hmm. How do you get them to do that, both from the IT standpoint and Microsoft standpoint, but also from the Extron and manufacturer standpoint?
So we have a love-hate relationship with Microsoft.
We love to hate them?
Yeah, well, we love to love them. We love to hate them. We love to work with them. And
we're recording this on a Mac. I don't care,
I know. But one of the things that they did very well, correction, I'm not going to say they did it well, but it was a good step the right direction with Windows 10, was forcing the updates. Now, that breaks some things as well. And what we do is we provide a whitelisting service for our clients. So when Microsoft rolls out an update, we get the update, but we hold that update back from their machine till we vet it and make sure that everything is
and make
good.
Sure they didn't break something in the fix.
Exactly. Once that update's whitelisted, then it gets rolled out. And that process is pretty quick, so that we stay current with security patches and things like that. When you're dealing with hardware, such as in the AV industry, it's a little harder to put that intelligence into the boxes. And maybe Derek could speak to this a little bit more, but when you're talking about updating firmwares on chipsets, it's a little bit different than updating a software patch on an operating system, okay? So how we do that in the AV industry is yet to be determined. There really needs to be some sort of management process for this stuff where you can centralize the management of software updates, patches, vulnerabilities, whatever it may be, to all of your hardware devices, because some of that's going to be software based, some of it's going to be firmware, it's going to be hardware based updates. And unless you've got a way to manage that process, you're literally having a tech log into every box, update the firmware on every box. And if you're a corporate customer, you could have hundreds of endpoints out there that you've got to deal with.
Well, real quickly, and Derek, I want you to chime in on this, but Extron does, and a number of other manufacturers do as well. They have tools for that, mm-hmm. right? They have a tool that I can log into my network
for their specific product. Though.
Right. I got the software from them, though. Right. That's the thing is you're talking about logging into every box. There are tools around that. Right. Just like there are tools to do that to Microsoft machines.
Absolutely. But the point is, so you might have Extron transceivers and, encoders, decoders on your network, but you've got Cisco VTC, and then you've got whoever's projector, and then you've got, you might have Extron control, you might have somebody else's control, right? You got so many different things going on in the typical AV deployment. Rarely do we see a situation where it's a single manufacturer deployment, right? When you walk into a corporate customer's IT network, usually they've standardized. You've got standard operating systems across most of the platforms. You've got standard switch infrastructure. It's a little bit easier to manage that process. But the AV community is such an ad hoc design approach, and I give kudos to the manufacturers. for trying to come up with holistic solutions, right? Because it makes it easier
I was
to
going to say,
manage
you
this
know what you
process.
just did? You just gave every AV manufacturer that provides end-to-end solutions a selling point.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because there is a valid selling point to it. Right, Derek?
No doubt. And the one difference that I'll think for a company like Extron, when we're thinking about these products, is that you're really working with a lot of embedded systems. And
Yeah.
you do need to treat those a little bit differently. And depending on where those are deployed is also, it really kind of depends on the kind of quality and standards that you might engineer into that kind of a product. And then ongoing with respect to maintenance, if you have a product that never touches the network, then there probably are certain attributes, certain procedures that you wouldn't follow with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have something that's highly reflective of the network environment that you would interact fairly regular basis with software, you might have a completely different approach. So encrypted connections, or the type of bit rate of encryption you use between communications between your software and hardware to hardware. Those are the kind of things that we look at all the time. We're constantly interrogating our own products. We have a whole team of people that do that as part of our quality process at Extron. And it's also it's kind of in our support nature. It's what we do. And so when we have a customer that has a concern, for example, either about how they deploy such improvements to products, or if they want to get documentation about what's included in those, we're always trying to find ways to make sure that that's really plain as day. We feel like if you're doing a good job with security, if you're really doing a good job of managing your firmware, you should be able to publish everything that you do, like every single thing, the ports, the protocols, the services, because that by itself doesn't make something not secure. But to go back to the WannaCry item, sometimes it's on our customers and on us manufacturers and folks in the industry to make sure we teach people about the best way to deploy products. What are the best practices? Because a lot of the times, simple incremental improvements can really, really kind of add layers, right? So that you're not just trying to defend something because you're trying to prevent the SMBV1, that's the file vulnerability that's at the root of WannaCry. You're not just trying to prevent access to that. So you're not all just focused on just the computers. You really need to think about kind of like security and layers. And I think that's something for our industry really has to come to grips with. It's so important because, we're just reflective of what's happening in the larger world. We just happen to be in a lot of those spaces that are very high touch and very, very visible.
But that's security in general, right? It's taking a layered approach.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right, Derek. People in general, they think, okay, well, I got to have a secure password and I'm okay. Or, if I back my stuff up to the cloud, I'm okay. But that's a false sense of security and a misnomer, because if you don't have the layered approach, then you've got a single point of failure in your security system. And that's not a good spot for anybody to be in, whether you're a manufacturer or an integrator. So, one of the points that we're going to talk about here in a minute is education and making sure that you have the skill. How do you get educated on some of this stuff? But I think a lot of integrators haven't taken the time to really understand the IP environment and to realize what it takes to secure the network layer, the application layer, the devices, everything that goes into that environment. So as a manufacturer, you guys do really good at the device piece, but there's so much more that builds up to that. And trying to educate these guys to do that is a real challenge.
Yeah, completely. And, one of the things that makes that's super challenging is, every organization, I'm sure the ones that you guys work with as well, they all have their own expectations and standards.
Yep.
They may be attached to, for example, it may be in healthcare, or maybe something in the banking industry, maybe the government. I'll get it.
That was me. Mute your phone, down and back.
There's been a security breach on your phone.
Actually.
But, depending on what industry you're in, you may have different standards, and it goes to how those products get deployed in every company. And even it varies by region, even by country. There's just different approaches to implementing products. And many times, we're not, in the AV industry, we're more and more beholden to other people's infrastructure. Right. And so there's only so much of that you're going to touch. So even the folks that are implementing products have a job of educating their customers as to those expectations. Manufacturers definitely help. We definitely do. We try to do our best. But I think as an entire industry, there's a certain barometer here that we kind of need to hold ourselves accountable to and for. Because, like I said, before it was the exception, something gets on the network. Now it's like the expectation. What do you mean it's not on that network? What do you mean I can't get data from it? What do you mean I can't manage it, right?
No, that's the thing is, and folks like you guys have kind of created that expectation. So,
Well, yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It really
Yeah.
is a good thing. And the tools that are made available, both from a remote access, monitoring, and being able to see what's going on. And then the other
Sure.
part is really great friends that are still technology managers. At the end of every semester, they still run a report and they say, these are the devices you actually used in this room. 100 years ago when I was a tech manager, my favorite thing was we had a professor who swore up and down that they absolutely had to have a document camera in their classroom, and then they were just adamant. And their document cameras aren't cheap, right? They're anywhere between $1,000 to $5,000 depending on which one you get. And finally, we ran the report, and come to find out, nobody in that specific classroom, which was this professor's classroom, had touched the document camera in a year and a half, so 3 semesters. So we showed the report to our administrator, and they said, "No, you don't need one." So it was a good meeting. All right, they didn't happen very often, dude. I'll move on. And I've mentioned this a couple times before, but I was very fortunate to be turned on to a website called SpiceWorks. So our next 2 stories come from them. Network diagramming best practices. And this specific article that we're going to link to on the site is talking about best practices for creating network diagrams. And this got me thinking, and actually got me thinking about you, Michael, because you and I have had conversations about some of your jobs that you're doing here recently. And you're deploying some pretty intensive Wi-Fi and some pretty intensive networks. And we just talked about the fact that there's a lot of AV stuff on the network. So here's the question to both of you. Michael, we'll start with you on this. What is the best practice for creating an integrated drawing set for network and AV? Do you put it together? Is it a separate? I mean, so you've got, at some point, you've got to make the network and the signal flow of the AV kind of come together at some point. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? What is the best practice?
So there's a couple of elements to this. One is the nature of your system architecture. Yeah. Because when we're talking about AV, we tend to think audio, video, control, and now in recent years, transport, connectivity,
which is network based,
which is network based, right? But because a lot of these technologies are still very disparate, but yet interdependent, a lot of times in documentation sets, we tend to break them out, especially in larger systems. So it'll go into one drawing set, but you're not trying to put all of these elements onto one page and try to make sense of that. That would just be crazy. Part of this also depends too on, is this a integrator built network specifically for the AV system, or are we dealing with integrating into a corporate environment where our devices are going to live on the enterprise LAN? So those are some questions that we have to ask first, right? Once we define that, then it's a matter of what works best for us to communicate what needs to be known about this system. So there's a couple of pieces. Got to know how to install it. Yes. Got to have the right information to do that. You got to be able to support it. So good as-built information. But a lot of times when we talk about documentation, we talk about line drawings. We talk about point-to-points and physical installation. But a key element a lot of people leave out is logical documentation. How does this system logically function as well? So you talk about a Wi-Fi deployment, right? Which APs have what SSIDs being broadcast from them, and what VLANs are they associated with? That's an important piece of documentation. Not just that I have an AP plugged into switch 1 port 48, but I also need to know logically, how is this thing going to function? Likewise, on the AV side, a lot of times we're breaking stuff out by VLAN, IP segments. We want to know what the IP subnet is that is going to be running the Dante network. Yeah. And we want to know what VLAN that is, what switch ports it's attached to. Are there QoS things that we need to be made aware of? What's the gateway information? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So does it need to be included? The answer is yes, it does. But to the extent depends on area of responsibility and who's responsible for it. you're not going to have complete visibility into your customer's backbone if you're integrating into their environment. But you do need to document what you do know about that network so that when your techs have to go on site to support it, you have the proper information to interface with the local IT group.
All right. Derek, one service beyond selling products that Extron does is you guys provide design assistance, right?
Yes, we do.
When you're doing that, does it make sense to integrate, or like in my head, have all of the line drawings and the documentation together, or kind of like Michael said, make sure that you have more of a logical flow in addition to separate line drawings?
Yeah, I'll echo what Michael said, is that there's a big difference between the physical connections in the system and then the other types of, the OSI model has all these layers, right? And so there's all these other things that happen on all those other layers, and more and more as AV people, we're tending to want to populate more of those other layers of the OSI model, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it's us manufacturers or whether it's customers saying that this is what my customer would like to implement. So what we find ourselves doing is two or threefold. First, we're always doing the kind of physical layer drawings and helping out customers so they can visualize what the connectivity might be. But that changes quite a bit when there's no physical connectivity, when there's implied connectivity. So like Michael was saying, I don't want to reiterate because I think he did a great job, is that there's other documentation that you can provide. And I can give you just one example of some choices we've made just to complement what Michael's already said. On the product pages for our control system processors, we actually include documentation as it relates to all of the other items that have to do with implementing that product. So that might include the ports and the protocols that are used, the services that are required, so that customers can paint that picture as they need it with their customers, so that they know what packages are running on a product, for example. So we have some products with Linux-based kernel, easy for me to say, Linux-based kernels, and they use open source packages like many folks do, and we tell you what those are. So the whole thing is this layer of transparency. We just want to make sure that when customers need to support the products that we manufacture, we can uphold that 100% guarantee that we offer. That we want to make sure customers are satisfied, and it's really on us to make sure that we're providing the right kind of documentation. And it's not always line drawings. Sometimes it's meetings, sometimes design discussions, sometimes it's coordination. But to Michael's point, we're blown way past the day when it just, make sure the 5 BNCs land here on this chassis, right? Or make sure we get pin 2, 3, and everything else correct.
Don't even get me started about pin 2 and 3 and 5.
Connector, right? Right. So don't mix that up. We're long past those days. We've gotten to things that are much more complicated. But still, those basic tenets of what the construction industry expects, they're still there, right? They still expect those physical connectivity drawings, where things land in infrastructure and so on. So I think everything we're doing now as an industry just means more. It's just another layer, right? Another layer.
Well, and actually, you bring up a really good point, Derek. And if we would start to take the mindset as an integration community and a secondary community to the IT world, if we start to look at our drawings and our documentation as like the OSI model, right? You got to have your physical layer, then you got to have your logical layers and your application layer, right? Sure. And all these different elements. So start thinking about documentation in that mindset and not just, hey, I need to connect wire A to port B. You're going to go much further in being able to adequately support your customer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And today, we expect products to authenticate, right? Mm-hmm. We expect people to be able to authenticate through products. You expect to be able to have certain levels of privileged access as a result of using a certain device. Right. It used to be, is it on? And that would be good enough, right?
Yeah, but now am I using LDAP, Radius, right? AAA,
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So you have all these things, and it's just, they're like unidentified flying objects with respect to what a lot of us have grown up with in the AV business. And now all those things are just going to require more education, more ways to learn about the things that I guess are just going to become the norm for many of the devices, or at least where they're being asked to be deployed.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that is actually going to do it for us. We actually had one more story that we'll throw on the old hopper there that we'll give you a link to. Derek, thank you so much, sir.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Great to meet you
Absolutely.
guys.
Great to meet you. How do people
Before we
find
started
you?
recording.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't talk about that. How do people find you or Extron?
You can find us at extron.com. I'm kind of in different places on the website. I'm responsible for our control system products and our a lot of our education initiatives at Extron as it relates to those products and our software. So you can find us and me there. You can always call me. I'm available. Call the main number.
All right,
We
very
answer our
good.
phone.
You do. It's very impressive. Also, thank you, Mr. Drainer.
Thank you.
How do people find you?
At Michael Drainer on Twitter, drainertechnologies.com, and Michael at drainertechnologies.com.
Very good. My name is Tim Albright. At this point, don't follow me on the Twitters because I'm complaining about the Bears most likely, even though it's off season. But go by the website if you would please, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. While you are there, check out our underwriter section. Extron is one of the folks that help us do what we do. So we appreciate them and ask that you check them out as well. Also, a couple brand new shows. This one is relatively new. It's about 6 months old. You also have one that deals with the AV business. It's called the AV Profession. We're doing it with a couple of AV business consultants. So check that out if you would, please. All that and more, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the IT AV Show.